Today in Cinderella for Everyone, we're going to read The Egyptian Cinderella. This is another Shirley Clemo book, illustrated again by Ruth Heller. And this one is a little different than some of the other ones. You may find some similarities. Let me show you the map. This is Africa, and Egypt is right up here in northern Egypt. And we will be reading another story from Africa. So I just want you to see where it is located. So, an Egyptian Cinderella. Long ago, in the land of Egypt, where the green Nile River widens to meet the blue sea, there lived a maiden called Rhodopis. When she was still a small child, Rhodopis had been stolen by pirates. She was snatched from her home in Greece, taken across the sea to Egypt, and there sold as a slave. Like the Egyptian servant girls, Rhodopis went to the water's edge each day to wash clothes or to gather the reeds that grew along the riverbank. But Rhodopis looked different from the Egyptian girls. Their eyes were brown and hers were green. Their hair hung straight to their shoulders, while the breeze blew hers into tangles. Their skin glowed like copper, but her pale skin burned red beneath the sun. That was how she got her name, for Rhodopis means rosy-cheeked in Greek. Rosy Rhodopis, scoffed the servant girls, hissing her name between their teeth. Rhodopis pretended not to hear, but she blushed rosier than ever. And there's Rhodopis, and here are the other servant girls. Although her master was kind, he was old and liked to doze beneath the fig tree. He seldom heard the servant girls tease Rhodopis. He never saw them ordering her about. "Hurry, Rhodopis," they would shout to her. "The geese are in the garden eating up the onions." "Mend my robe." "I'm hungry, Rhodopis." "Bake the bread." Rhodopis always hurried to do their bidding, for the Egyptian girls were household servants, and she was only a slave. And there is the master sleeping. And there you see Rhodopis running to do their bidding. Rhodopis found friends among the animals instead. Birds ate crumbs from her hands. She coaxed the monkey to sit upon her shoulders and charmed the hippopotamus with her song. It would raise its huge head from the muddy waters and prick its small ears to listen. Sometimes, when her chores were done and the day had cooled, Rhodopis would dance for her animal companions. She twirled so lightly that her tiny bare feet scarcely touched the ground. One evening, her master awakened to see her dance. "No goddess is more nimble," he called out. "Such a gift deserves reward." He tugged his chin whiskers, thinking, and then declared, "You shall go barefoot no longer." And there she is dancing, with the monkey on her shoulder, and the birds, and the hippopotamus. And there's her master when he saw her, tugging at his chin whiskers. Her master ordered a pair of dainty slippers made especially for Rhodopis. The soles were of real leather, and the toes were gilded with rose-red gold. Now, when Rhodopis danced, her feet sparkled like fireflies. The rose-red slippers set Rhodopis more apart than ever. The Egyptian servant girls were jealous, for they wore clumsy sandals woven from papyrus. Out of spite, they found new tasks for her to do, keeping Rhodopis so busy that she was too tired to dance at night. One evening, Kippa, who was the chief among the servant girls, announced, "Tomorrow we will sail for Memphis to see the Pharaoh. His Majesty is going to hold court for all his subjects." "There will be musicians and dancing," said another servant girl, eyeing the rose-red slippers. "There will be feasting," added the third. "Poor Rhodopis, you must stay behind," Kippa jeered. "You have linen to wash and grain to grind and the garden to weed." And there she is, watching the other servant girls. And her rose-red slippers on her feet, right there. The next morning, just as Ra the sun was climbing into the sky, Rhodopis followed the servant girls to the riverbank. Kippa wore a necklace of blue beads. Bracelets jingled on the wrists of the second, and the third had tied a many-colored sash about her waist. Although Rhodopis wore a plain tunic, on her feet were the rose-red slippers. Perhaps they will let me come along to see the pharaoh after all, she thought. But the 3 servant girls pulled their raft around the bend of the river without giving Rhodopis a backwards glance. Rhodopis sighed and turned to the basket piled high with dirty clothes. Wash the linen, weed the garden, grind the grain. She slapped the wood paddle against the cloth in time to her song. The hippopotamus, tired of so dull a tune, pushed out the reeds and splashed into the river. "Shame!" cried Rhodopis, shaking her paddle. "You splattered mud on my beautiful slippers." There are the servant girls leaving. And there are the animals. She polished the shoes on the hem of her tunic until the rosy gold glittered in the sun. Then she carefully put them on the bank behind her. "Wash the linen, weed the garden," Rhodopis began again. Then suddenly a shadow fell on the water. Rhodopis jumped up. A great falcon, the symbol of the god Horus, circled in the sky with wings spread so wide that they blotted out the sun. "Greetings to you, proud Horus," Rhodopis murmured. She bowed her head and felt a rush of air on the back of her neck. And there is the falcon. And look what he has in his claws. When Rhodopis dared to lift her eye, she saw the falcon soar away. Dangling from his talons was one of her beautiful slippers. "Stop!" she pleaded. "Please come back." But the bird did not heed her. He flew towards the sun till he was no more than a dark speck against the gold. Rhodopis bit her tongue. One shoe was worse than none at all. Now she'd have to dance like a stork, hopping about on one foot. Even the monkey would laugh. Rhodopis tucked the slipper into her tunic and returned her laundry, salting the river with her tears. And there she is, pleading for him to come back with her slipper. After Rhodopis had lost sight of the falcon, the mighty bird followed the course of the Nile to the city of Memphis, to the square where the pharaoh was holding court. There the falcon watched and waited. The pharaoh's name was Amasis. On his head he wore a red and white crown of the 2 Egypts. The double crown was heavy and pinched his ears. He preferred driving his chariot fast as the wind to sitting on a throne. Amasis yawned. And there you see the falcon with his slipper right there. And you see all of the village. And there is Amasis with his red and white crown. At that very moment, the falcon dropped the rose-red slipper into his lap. The slipper was so bright that Amasis thought it was a scrap from the sun. Then he saw the falcon wheeling overhead. "The god Horus sends me a sign," exclaimed the pharaoh. He picked up the rose-red slipper. "Every maiden in Egypt must try the shoe. She whose foot it fits shall be my queen. That is the will of the gods." Amasis dismissed the court, called for his chariot, and began his search at once. And there's Amasis looking at the beautiful slipper. When the Egyptian servant girls arrived in Memphis, they found the throne empty and the streets deserted. They were so angry on their return that even seeing Rhodopis without her rose-red slipper did not please them. "Slaves are better off barefoot," snapped Kippa. And there's the empty throne. And there are the 3 servant girls. The pharaoh journeyed to distant cities. He tracked the desert where pyramid towers over the sand, and he climbed the steep cliffs where falcon nests. The rose-red slipper was always in his hand. Wherever he went, women and girls, rich or poor, flocked to try on the slipper, but none could fit into so small a shoe. And there's Horus going all over in his chariot with the rose-red slipper, and there are all the women and girls of Egypt. The longer Amasis searched, the more determined he became to marry the maiden who had lost the tiny slipper. He summoned his royal barge and vowed to visit every landing along the Nile. The barge was hung with sails of silk. Trumpets blared and oarsmen rowed to the beat of gongs. The ding was so dreadful that when the barge rounded the bend in the river, Rhodopis fled in alarm, but the servant girls ran to the water's edge. And there is Amasis' boat with the men rowing. Now we will see the pharaoh, cried Kippa. Amasis held up the rose-red slipper. Whoever can wear this shoe shall be my queen. The servant girls knew that shoe, and knew its owner too. They kept clapped their hands over their mouths and said nothing. If one of them could wear it. First Kippa, then the others tried to put on the slipper. Each crammed her foot and curled her toes and squeezed until tears ran down her cheeks. Still, her heel hung over. Enough, said Amasis wearily. He would have set sail again had he not chanced to see Rhodopis peering from the rushes. And there she is in the rushes, which are the long grass. And there he is holding the slipper. Come, he commanded, you must try this rose-red slipper. The servant girls gawked, open-mouthed, as the pharaoh kneeled before Rhodopis. He slipped the tiny shoe on her foot with ease. Then Rhodopis pulled its mate from the folds of her tunic. Behold, cried Amasis, in all this land there is none so fit to be queen. But Rhodopis is a slave, protested one of the servant girls. Kippa sniffed. She's not even Egyptian. She is the most Egyptian of all, said Pharaoh, for her eyes are as green as the Nile, her hair as feathery as papyrus, and her skin as pink as the lotus flower. The Pharaoh led Rhodopis to the royal barge, and with every step, her rose-red slippers twinkled and sparkled in the sun. So in the back, the author, he gave us a couple of notes. So the tale of Rhodopis and the rose-red slipper is one of the most oldest Cinderella stories. It was first recorded by the Roman historian Strabo in the 1st century BC. The story is both fact and fable. Rhodopis is believed to have been born in northern Greece, kidnapped by pirates as a child and sold to a rich man on the island of Samos. One of her fellow slaves was a homely little man named Aesop, who told her wonderful fables about animals. When Rhodopis was almost grown, she was taken to Egypt and bought by a man named Charax. Her new master was also Greek, and he gave many gifts and favors to Rhodopis. In these days, a fortunate slave might live far better than a hired servant. The servant, although free, were poor and lived in mud huts, while a chosen slave enjoyed the comforts of the master's villa. The existence of the rose-red slipper is possible. Ancient Egyptian gold was sometimes mixed with iron, which gave it a reddish hue. In retelling the story, I preferred to have the gilded slipper stolen by a falcon, although some reference named the bird as an eagle. Horus, Egyptian sky god and deity of the living pharaohs, was believed to appear on earth as a falcon. What is fact is that Greek slave girl Rhodopis married the pharaoh Amasis, and became his queen. So there's some fact and some fiction in here, and I hope you really enjoyed the Egyptian Cinderella, and if you could see its similarities to some of the other books that we've read and some of the differences.